Welcome to the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. We don't shy away and keep secrets here. We empower you with education, telling you the truth about all things aesthetic medicine while encouraging you to be the best version of yourself. It's time to look great and feel good doing it. This is your host, mom, speaker, and board-certified physician, Dr. Judith Borger.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 74 of the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. This is Dr. Judith Borger, and today we're talking about a little bit hesitation and overcoming fear, and sometimes these preconceived notions that can make us stop spreading our wings, stop trying something new because we're living in our comfort zone and we're letting the past project into our future. And I voluntold my amazing business manager, Lacey, to be on this podcast with me. I want to say she volunteered, but I'm not sure how much choice she actually has. Let's just say she graciously agreed when I asked her. So you have all heard her in an amazing episode about when to delegate. But the reason I asked her to come on is because we just had a team retreat at the Miraval, and it was so transformative and it was so life-changing and it was so much fun. And Lacey was really the one that came in with a lot of hesitation to this retreat. And she had a really bad experience on a prior retreat where she didn't feel safe, where she felt targeted, where she felt excluded. And even though we all work as a team, we're not geographically all in the same place. So even though Lacey and I have met before, she had not really in person met anybody else than me, because we all live in North Carolina and she lives all the way in Washington. So there was also that fear for her that she shared of, these people are all a group and I don't belong, or do I belong? And I just felt like these issues would be really important to talk about. And I love that she's willing to talk about it, because I am an adventurer. I'm outgoing. Like, you could tell me I'm going to drop you off with a wilderness expedition with a bunch of like Russian people that don't speak your language, and I'd be like, where are we going? This is going to be great. Yeah, I'm going to make this happen. But I realized that not everybody feels that way. So I love that she's willing to come on and talk about her perspective, how it felt for her to be on the retreat, and all those things. So I have talked a lot. Welcome, welcome, Lacey.
Hi there. Thanks for having me, Jude. And I will say, from my perspective, at one time I was very outgoing, very let's do this right now, the risk taker, loved enjoying all the things and experiences. However, childbirth, motherhood, COVID, and bad experiences at private retreats as well, and women gatherings changed that for me. And so I didn't realize how nervous and scared I was until about 2 months before this retreat. And I did talk to you about it briefly, but I will say this experience has changed my mind forever. It was a nice reminder that women can come together and get along and balance each other out and encourage each other without competition and without one-upping or I'm better than you in any capacity, and especially in a financial class or a professionalism capacity, because some of us are doctors, some of us are nurses, some of us are just assistants, and there is a lot of stigma between doctors and people that aren't physicians and things like that. And so to be able to get a group of women together that had so many different ranges of professionalism and accreditations and all of that, it was a breath of fresh air to be able to bond over motherhood and our children and our spouses and just life in general. And so I really want to thank you for that opportunity, because had I not had that opportunity, I don't think I would have searched it out for fear that it wouldn't have gone the way I would hope it would.
Thank you so much for saying that. One of the things that is one of my core principles is always to create a culture of belonging. You have worked with me now, and you know that is one of my core principles, that I want to feel that everybody who is in my sphere or my energy field somehow feels like they belong and feels like they're getting a hug from me. The way that you felt that is really important to me. But let's go back to when you said you felt nervous and anxious about 2 months before. What were some of the thoughts running through your head? What are some of the things you were worried about? Just because, again, some people might have seen our retreat and have exactly those same feelings.
Yeah. So the first thing that crossed my mind is who's going to watch my kids during the week? Because this retreat did take place during the weekdays. And I have a spouse that works, and some people don't have spouses and things like that. So the first thing was who's going to take care of my kids and dogs? How am I going to figure this out? And that one, I was actually able to let go really quickly with some discussion with you that was very, why don't I deserve this? Why can't I take this break? And things like that. Because as a mom, as a business owner, as someone who is career driven, stepping away from everything can be just as scary, even if it's just for a few days. So many things as a mother race through your mind of what could happen and what could go wrong. But that one was one I was actually able to overcome pretty quickly. And that was with just some healthy discussion with you personally. That was, why don't you deserve this? Why is it not okay for moms to step away? If roles were reversed and dad was going away for a hunting trip or something, there would be no question. The kids would be taken care of, the dogs would be taken care of, all the things would be covered because it's implied that mother would take care of it. And so I used that as far as convincing myself that it was safe to do that for myself and it was okay to step away. And I really had to not focus on the negative about it and look to what are the positives that could come out of this? What could change my life? What could change me now? And what healthy alternatives there were to just sitting at home watching everybody else enjoy these things.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a husband, and I think most of us do have more villages than we know. Like, you would be
Right.
surprised how many grandparents might be willing to fly in, or,
Right.
like I have preschool teachers on staff that I sometimes hire to watch my kids and neighbors and friends and all of the things, right? So that was number one. And I think one of the other things we really talked about, and you brought this up, was just this idea of what is it that I want to do? Because then it came to planning the activities and our time there. And I think a lot of people feel that way, that we had this long discussion that still sticks with me, where like most of us, like when we plan vacations or trips or something like that, there's this preconceived script. So either it's a when we go to the beach for 25 years, we have always done this. So there is
Right.
this established routine in our family, especially if it's like a traditional trip with maybe extended family or family, where we're like, this is our tradition and we follow it.
Or we have to
Other,
do these things for the kids to
I
be
was just gonna
satisfied
say that.
on
That's
this
what I was gonna
trip.
say. Or we plan these trips for everybody else, and our
Right.
priority as mothers a lot of times is making sure that everybody else has fun, right? Oh, the
Oh,
kids will love this museum, and the kids will love this, and the kids will love this, and the kids will love this. Or maybe even the husband will love that, or my mother
right.
will love this. And how many times do we say, we're gonna do this because I will love this?
Oh, never. And I will say, one of once I got through that whole the leaving anxiety, then I was hit with about 8 weeks before your retreat. The Miraval sends out a lovely itinerary of, well, a schedule of activities you may participate in. Some are free and just included in your stay, and some have a little bit of expense added to them. And getting this list, they essentially have something for every hour of every day, pretty much from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it was overwhelming to decide how I was going to spend 72 hours doing things I only wanted to do. It was like I have said in reflection from the trip, we were there for about 4 days total, and I didn't realize how much I struggled with making my own decisions and not basing it on everyone else. until I was in that situation. It took me 72 hours. Day 3 is when I finally said, you know what? I'm not going to go to these workout classes. I'm not going to do a bunch of stuff. I'm going to sit by the pool. I am going to relax. I'm going to read my books. I'm going to swing in a hammock. I'm going to just be, because that's what I wanted to do. And when I first got there, it was more of, I saw your itinerary, which was just, you had a full day, and some of the other people had full days, and I had 2 things on my list. And I was very like, oh, what am I going to do while I'm here? And so I filled my list immediately. But by the next morning, because of time difference and everything, I realized I didn't want to get up at 5 a.m. my time. And all the activities I wanted to do that would be that early, I was going to skip because I wanted to sleep in. And it made me swallow my pride and realize that as many decisions as I make in my everyday life for everyone else, I truly don't make any decisions based on what I want and what I want to do, because it's constantly like, even in my career, what am I going to do to get to these financial goals to support my family, to make sure I can pay for my kids' extracurriculars, to what do I have to do to provide in a certain way? And I think that's something I'm definitely still sitting with a week later is, why don't I do anything that I want to do? Why don't I make decisions based just on me? What out there has told me that I can't? Nothing. Because if you look around, everything's like self-care, do stuff for you, get out of the house, do all these things, but we don't. We
Well,
don't
I
if
would
we really
argue
sit
that
there and
it's
think
really
about
deep
it.
conditioning that we receive in
Probably.
schools, right? I would argue that really it's the role models that our mothers were. It's the
For
conditioning that we
sure.
receive as women in a patriarchal society, right? And up until really recently in history, women couldn't have a job, women couldn't have a bank account, women couldn't own property. It's
Right.
amazing how few generations you have to go back until things that women couldn't have a bank account or a credit card. What was that, in the 70s at some point? I
Yeah.
don't quote me, but it's crazy how even our mothers were already born that, right? So I think we have been inherited this long lineage of people where women are here to serve and please men. And by us adding jobs, all we did is like add jobs.
Right.
Like we
And I
did.
will say, I actually did have a really good grandmother as a role model. She's been a business owner for over 30 years and has been like the matriarch of our family. However, and she's very much, my grandpa does all the cleaning. She
Oh, God,
she
grandma.
she's very much, I have one life to live. I'm not going to spend it doing things I don't want to do. And so when I sit here and think about it, like, I wonder, because she was my mother, and so I look and I'm like, I actually did have that as a role model, which gave me my independence and stuff, but I also listened to all the male influence, my father, my uncle, my other grandparents, and things like that, about how she's just her, and it was a bad thing to be the way she was, but she's successful.
See,
She
that's what you
has had
heard.
a business for over 30.
That was the thing they told you, that
So
it was
were they
bad to be
jealous?
like
Like,
she was.
yeah, why, what was it that made them say that was bad? Because by all means, she's extremely successful. Now, she did lack empathy and lacked the nurturing, motherly side of things, but that woman always did the things she loved and lived a full life for it, and still does to this day. And like I said, my grandfather does all the cleaning and stuff, because if not, my grandma would probably live in a mess. But their relationship worked that way and balanced that way. But I still look like I had this great influence of that, but I also had the influence saying that was a bad thing. And I don't, like, that's what I feel like we need to break. Like, it's totally okay to be that way.
I think that's fascinating. It's so fascinating. And I think, you know what? These are the conversations also that we're doing, like a month of group coaching leading up to the event at our retreat that's included with it. And I think it's so interesting because I think these are the kind of conversations that women can have before the retreat when they're like, you guys, I struggle with the schedule. And then everybody can chime and be like,
Right.
I do too, and maybe we can all reflect, like, what were the things that made us feel like it's not okay? And I love that you had that grandmother as a thing, but at the same time, even in our 2 minutes of talking about it, we were already able to identify that she was judged for it, right? And that the rest of society, and I'm just saying society with a quotation mark, your family said, "That's grandma, but don't be like grandma." Because somehow
Right.
there's something bad about that. There's something wrong about that.
Too independent. It's too
Well, I
much.
mean, it did
You can't
not
have
really
both.
save the old patriarchy, and that's the
Right.
other thing that I wanna say, that when something doesn't serve people, they're not gonna support it. Like, old white dudes, and I'm not talking about your family, I'm talking about society, they really had very little to wanna promote the status quo change, because it was really working for them very well, right? Status quo back then in society was working really well for old white dudes, but not so much for anybody else. So I'm glad as a society we've changed, but that brings me back to something that I have really been working on myself a lot, and that probably that relates to this very well, and it's the concept of enchantment. And when I think about enchantment, it's really those moments where you feel whole and you feel at peace inside of yourself. So those moments when life is just beautiful and it's wonderful. And a lot of times for people, enchantment is found in exactly what your soul was drawn to do. It's swinging in the gentle breeze in a hammock, right?
It was sitting by the pool, looking out over the view, just being present, listening to my body and what it needed, and just feeling what I wanted to feel and not putting up a front to make everyone else comfortable.
Yes, and I think enchantment is so important in the fact that I really strive for as much enchantment in my life as possible. And enchantment is also what you can really find at a retreat. It's that space to figure out what really brings you joy. Because really, a lot of what these activities are meant to do are also push you out of your comfort zone. Not all of them, right? Some of them are yoga and meditation. If you do a ropes course, or you do a horse experience, or you do something that you've never done before, we did archery, right? It's about pushing you out of your comfort zone and giving you a different perspective so that you can develop a different and new sort of relationship with yourself, that you can see things you've never seen before. And I think most of us came away with areas of enchantment where we were like, wow, this was so much fun. Like, why do I not do this at home? Or I should do it at home. That's how I felt about riding the horses. I used to ride horses and I haven't been on a horse in 30 years. And I don't know why. It's just life and kids. And then I rode the horse, and every minute that went by, I was just like, wow, I love feeling the rhythm of the horse. I love being out in nature. I love everything about this. And like it's totally accessible for me. Like there's a stable 10 minutes down the road from me that offer like lessons. And I like emailed them and I was like, hey, my 8-year-old daughter and I, like almost 8-year-old daughter and I, like, what do you offer? And I think a lot of us found those moments in different capacities. And for you, it might just be like why don't I take time to spend 30 minutes by the pool and hanging out, or Kayla and her love for gardening. And like we all had those moments where we got back to things that bring us joy. So yeah, enchantment. And I think the other thing about enchantment is that we should find enchantment simply because we're worth it. There has to be no benefit to the universe as a whole. Do I think there's a benefit to the universe as a whole if we find enchantment? Of course there is, because our energies touch each other and our frequencies touch each other. But I almost want to put that aside. I don't want you to say, find the calm so that you can be a better mother, because that's not the point. Find the calm, find the peace, because it feels amazing for your life, and you're worth it, and your life is worth it.
And finding that peace and putting that on being a better mother or things like that, once again, you're taking those something for someone else. And it's so easy to do that with everything every day. And pardon me, I think I definitely had some great conversation with Michelle on this trip. There was a lot of eye-opening. There was some fear as far as spiritual and religious belief kind of intertwining on this trip. Both her and I worried that we would be crossing boundaries that we wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with. However, we were able to find comfort in a lot of it without overstepping and questioning our beliefs and things like that. And so I think there was some bonding that we didn't expect. And I will personally say that I feel very protective over the staff at concierge and all of them.
Mhm.
And so I was able to pick up on some discomfort in some things and being able to go one on one and have some conversations that we wouldn't necessarily have in our workday or in any other capacity because the vibe in these places at the Miraval is so calming and so disconnected because they do have a pretty strict no electronics policy. And it was like time slowed down. Each day took longer to get through, which told me I was doing something good and enjoying myself because the day wasn't just here and gone. It was each day was a process. Each hour took a little bit longer. I was enjoying my time. I was enjoying my time with other women and bonding in different ways. And I just am so thankful for that. But also, I will say, until you've been there and felt it, it's so hard to put into words because each week flies by faster. But when I was there, I said it many times, it's like time just slows here. And I think that's majorly because one, we're not on our electronics constantly looking for updates, looking for that rhythm and feed and whatever else. But also I realized and the way I word it to like my husband is I don't ever shut off. And that's some would say that's my professionalism side. Like my husband has a good job, good solid blue collar job. And so I always present myself in front of our friends, in front of our acquaintances, in front of our family as if not to be judged. She's got her stuff together. Like she makes the right decision. She's a good mom. Like I'm constantly living in that how do I look to everyone else that I have forgotten to be the life of the party. And I used to be. Like I have forgotten how to have fun because I'm so on all the time. And I think as women, we just have such a box around us that if you step out of that box, you're seen as less than or judged or whatever else. And so I think there's a big part of that in going there. I was very worried because of like the Miraval is so out of something normal for me. I'm very much it is and it isn't. I'm very much outdoorsy and things like that. I am not hugely spiritual, so I was nervous for all of that, but there was something for me. There was always something for me that I would enjoy. There was always something for me to learn or experience that I wouldn't have got to anywhere else. And seeing other women do that was almost as exciting as myself because I know that they're in similar situations as me. We've all got that box around us. And once we step out of it, we get to be the life of the party again. We get to be there without fear of judgment. Was worried I wouldn't have the proper clothing for there. Very much Lululemon and like all the name brands and stuff, and I don't necessarily dress that way. However, there was a lot of people there that were just walking around in bathing suits. So
And,
it's
listen, I
all
walked
about
around in my bathing suit,
comfortable
and how many nights did we have dinner in our bathrobes?
and you could tell there was no judgment. There was no judgment from the staff about what we were wearing or how we looked. There was no judgment from other people that were there visiting. It was very much everybody said hi to each other. Everybody, how's your day going? It was such a vibe and such a uplifting thing that I only wish every woman could experience it at least once, because it does change your life. It reminds you that we don't have to be in that box. And it reminds you how much we do judge ourselves or put pressure on ourselves that we don't need to, just for other people's amusement and ease. And so I think it's great to have this. I think it's great for women who have daughters, especially, to do this, because they can see their mom doing something healthy and great. So then they'll want to do it and follow suit, which only breeds better and stronger women and children that make less judgment calls as far as judging other people on their worth based on what they see and stuff like that. I will say both of my girls have seen a change in me since I came back, and they said I came back glowing, which they've never seen. And my oldest is 11 and she's counting down the days till she can go on one of these trips. And when I came back, she's like, "Why are you working already? You just went on a trip. Aren't you going to take time off?" And I was like, "No, I'm more energized now to work more than ever because I'm inspired. I've got the creative juices flowing again, and I'm excited to do it." It's like you almost need to disconnect to reboot to regain that excitement in things.
I
And
love that. I
it's
love
just
that.
so great.
I love that. So yeah, let's go into that. What is it, if you talked about your own experience and you have already said some of the things, but what are some of the other things that you really took away from our retreat that you think might be useful for those that are hesitant, those, or even those that aren't hesitant? That I think number one, it's just like that there's a magic in it, and like that I really always believe that, especially coming together in person and our energies merge and our subconsciouses merge, especially if we can do it in a healthy, uplifting way, there's nothing more powerful and nothing more special, which at the same time, the Miraval is built on sacred grounds and the energy is wonderful there. And they also have policies and procedures in place and recruit their staff in such a way that it's such a welcoming, non-judgmental, kind of peaceful atmosphere. You're right. I think number one is that the true magnificence. We can post reels, we can talk about it, and people do have to experience it. But what are some of the other things that you would like to share that you're taking away?
I would say setting aside intentional time to disconnect from the world. Unplug your electronics, because we don't realize how much of our actual time that is consuming us. And I was able to connect with women and bond and have healthy conversations, specifically with Kayla. We both have kids that struggle. We each have one kid in particular that we have to dump more of ourselves into than the other children. And Kayla and I have been with you. She's been with you a little bit longer, but we've had our differences and stuff. And I was worried. However, getting there, meeting her in person and everything else, Kayla and I are the same person. And it was awesome to be able to connect that way. And I think, had we had our phones on us and had we been focusing on getting reels up and highlighting our trip and all of that, I don't think we would have connected on a little bit deeper level. I don't think we would have had those healthy conversations in a safe space. I think there would have been a little bit more judgment, even had I just come to the office and met everybody. I think because then people get territorial. And I think removing everyone from their territory is part of this too. Is everyone's a little uncomfortable because they don't know what to expect and it's all new. And so that kind of throws people off their professionalism and they're on, as I say, because they're out of whack. So they're a little uncomfortable. So putting ourselves back in those boxes is a lot harder because we're uncomfortable already.
I feel my goal is that everybody leaves their boxes behind, right?
And
And
I definitely would say that happens. Now, my only hope is that since we get this 1 month prior to our next retreat in working with these women and discussing this with women, it's they'll be able to breathe a little easier and it won't take them 3 days like it did me. I
That's really part of why we're starting the Chat 4, right? Is that it's really a celebration, and I also wanna create the community before, so nobody has to worry about, "Oh, what's it gonna be like when I get there?" Because hopefully there's at least, like, a couple people just from the group coaching calls that they've identified that they have a connection with, and I think that's the next thing that I wanna talk about a little bit is we did some visioning setting and some visioning activities and some goal setting and things like that, and I think for people that haven't done group coaching and haven't done group coaching, sometimes people think there's some reason that like a one-on-one is better. And while I do one-on-one and I love one-on-one, I think people sometimes underestimate the power of a group and a power of hearing somebody's perspective that's either different or the same as yours, or somebody sharing how they feel. And that's also what the ideas of this podcast is, for you to normalize some of those fears and people being like, oh, it's not me, I'm not broken, right? This is a thing that people go through, and it's a normal thing that people go through.
And I will say I was personally a naysayer on group coaching because I had never experienced it in a healthy way. I had only experienced it in unhealthy, judgmental ways. And I will say I do therapy occasionally, but I don't like therapy doesn't really work for me. I have plenty of people to talk to, but the group coaching did do something for me. Hearing that, like Kayla, in the exact same boat I am with my kids, with my spouse, like everything, knowing that I wasn't alone. And that was one of when you asked what we took away from this trip, that was my number one, is knowing that I'm not alone in the daily judgment on myself, in the choices I'm making. Am I a good enough mom? I do know we all struggle with that as moms. If you're a decent mom, that's what you struggle with. But
There's something different about conceptually knowing it and feeling it. It's the same
and
thing with
yes,
wellness. Like the world tells us, like, oh, you should prioritize your self-care.
yes.
But if you don't feel like that's truly true, or you think that's for other people, or you think that's secondary to your kids, there is this thing about knowing this is how I should feel, and that thought feeling true.
And that's where I was. I was very much, I really need this trip. Is it going to benefit me? I don't think like all this meditation and what we call woohoo stuff is very much my style. But then the group coaching came and we all sat down as equals and we all had true soul discussions. We had legitimate questions that other people could give their advice and experiences with. We had some direction. And then on top of it, we had the goal setting and things like that with you from a more of a coaching workshop perspective, which gave us the tasks that we need or gave us the opportunity to create those tasks to get us in a better space for when we did come home. We had an action plan of how we could continue to keep this healthy space alive, even away from the retreat. And I think walking away with something like that was so much bigger than just going to this retreat and walking away from a spa. This was more, what can I do to bring this to my daily life? How can I change things or shift things so that I am making more decisions based on what I like and what I want to do and not just giving up myself fully for everyone else. And it put a lot of things into perspective having everyone else there to talk about it because like I said, whether you're a doctor, an assistant, a nurse, whatever, or business owner, you could be anything, but we all united on very similar things and didn't judge each other for it. We didn't do the one-upping game. We didn't do the, well, my life is worse than yours. And so it was amazing. Like it truly was. And I didn't understand the concept of group coaching prior, but now I get it and I can see how beneficial it could be, especially before the next retreat, to get people to feel a little bit more comfortable and realize that we're all the same. We really are. And we have so much that connects us. And if we just take the time to be quiet and listen, like you'll hear that. You'll hear why they do the things they do or why they make the choices they make. And you may say, hey, I did that once, but this is what helped me. And it can change their minds. Prime example of how that worked in our situation. Kayla and I had plenty of conversations about our kids, but the one really good one that I think she took away and is really looking into is the horse therapy. That was a huge game changer for my ADHD child with behavioral issues.
Oh, she got to do the horse thing herself. She got to experience the
She
horse. So not
experienced it
only
and was
was there
like,
you
yep,
saying this was a game changer for my kid who's similar, she also got to do, and they have amazing equine activities and they're all equine certified coaches. So they're like coach therapists. And even our stuff, like the stuff we learned about ourselves and everything, she's, yeah, this would be amazing for my child. Because not only did she get to hear you and connect with you on that level, she got to experience the
yeah.
magic and beauty of working with horses.
Yeah, and I think it was really eye-opening, and it was really exciting to watch her get excited to share that with her kids after sharing that with her and then watching her get to go through it, and it just that fed me more than I knew because you think people listen to you and hear you and stuff, but when they actually take what you give them and kind of use it to their advantage, that's whole part of sharing our life experiences to grow and learn from each other. And so watching that happen in real time it's like a win for yourself. You get, oh, people do care, people do listen.
Well,
And we
you
live
felt
so
seen
much
and
that
heard at that moment, right? That is what
yeah,
true connection is. And I think that's also a thing about not having our phones, right? Because so many times when people talk to you, they aren't really that present. So the fact that you have conversations and workshops and all of the things with everybody being really present, and the fact that you had conversations and experiences where you felt truly seen and truly heard,
right.
that's what I hear you describing.
For sure. And so I see the huge benefit in it, and I am a total believer in group coaching and healthy and safe environments for sure.
I love that. I feel like this addressed a lot of the things. Was there any other big hesitations or fears or judgments that you felt beforehand that I think we should bring up and talk about?
I just want to reiterate, don't let the itinerary destroy your confidence because that was definitely a big one for me. It's very overwhelming to choose doing what you want to do and deciding what you want to do. But as someone who's been through it, I will be the first to tell you may have all these plans for when, as soon as you get there, a day full of activities or multiple days full of activities, and it's totally okay to change your mind.
That's
I
actually the other thing I wanted to say is that if you want to plan stuff before you get there and you have the itinerary and it makes you feel excited, that's okay. If you want to plan what you want to do while you're there, there's experience planners, there's things you can sign up for. Yeah, don't let that.
let the fear of overwhelm scare you out of this because
Yeah, and
it will happen, but don't let it take advantage of you because it's worth every second. It really is.
yeah, really, all you have to do is commit to the retreat, book your flight, book your hotel room, or find a roommate, and then everything else we can figure out while you're there. And we're doing about 4 hours of scheduled activities a day, plus like the spiritual drumming at night, the cocktail hour welcome ceremony. There's plenty of time for you to do all the fun things for the Miraval. There's plenty of time for you to swing in a hammock and enjoy the sunshine. There's plenty of time for you. And I think that's the other thing. When I've gone to conferences, a lot of times I've really wanted to connect with the people, but we fill this whole day and traditional conferences with lectures and all of that stuff. And then you don't get to connect with the person who's been sitting with you all day long. And so by just doing half day programming, it does give you the time, and it's an all inclusive. So you will share meals together. And we've had great conversations over lunch, breakfast, dinner. So that's another thing, seeing that it's all inclusive. You will share meals together. You can have further connection over that. And with the activities, you do get an activity credit when you book your room. So there's also already credit built into your activities budget. Yeah. Again, I hope that this sort of helps address some of the fears that some people have, or the hesitation, whether it's for our retreat or just taking on a new project in the future. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, not only for what you do for me and my life and my business, but also for coming on and being so brave to share your own feelings and being vulnerable with the podcast world.
For sure. Would love to be a voice to help anyone who is struggling with that. Like we said at the beginning, I had only ever been on one other retreat and it was awful. So if I can help convince anybody that this is different, I 100% will, because I've lived it. I've been the one that is so scared to ever do it again that I was adamant I never would. And I would not trade this trip for anything. It was worth so much more than the financial aspect. It was worth so much more than just giving up a few days with my kids. Like, it recharged me, it refocused me, it gave me longer lasting friendships, and it just, I feel like I said, every woman should get to enjoy this at least once and learn and feel loved and cared for, especially by other women, because that's such a difficult thing to do, especially in large groups. Thank you for taking us and gifting us this amazing opportunity, not only as your staff, but as a friend. And I think it was amazing. And I really cannot wait to help host the one in April and see all the beautiful faces that are going to be there and meet some new friends and create some amazing memories and get to share this retreat and experience with as many other women as possible.
Yes, I agree. And that's the thing, for any of our listeners, you get to meet us both. There you go. You already have one more friend. And I think the other thing that talking about this culture of belonging that I said from the beginning is that there wasn't going to be registration tiers, because I've also gone to retreats and then there's like VIP groups and VIP seating. And I think like that defeats the whole freaking point of
Yep.
true connection. And that's also why I did not make it physician only, even though I know there's some physician that will rub the wrong way, and that's okay. You can have your opinion, I have mine, but the idea is that, like you said, you talked about this box a lot, and I think it's a completely artificial box that once you've smashed that box, you realize how silly that box is. It is really the truly, again, human connection. When you realize that no matter what somebody's status, education level is, really in the end, most of us want love and joy and acceptance and peace, right? And it does not matter anything else. And so that is really the level of true connection and enchantment. That is really the level of true connection we're also desiring to create. And we can all meet in our Miraval spa robes at dinner.
That is the best part of the day, is dinner in our spa robes. Let me tell you, that is life-changing. Going to a Michelin chef's dinner with your spa robe on is just next level, and every woman needs to experience it.
I love you forever. Thank you. Thank you to all of our listeners, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Aesthetic Doctor podcast with Dr. Judith Borger. We'd love to connect with you outside of the show. Follow Dr. Borger on Instagram at Dr. Borger and find more online and ways to work with Dr. Borger at www.theaestheticdoctor.com. Until next time, be well.